You want to know a secret? You want to know how the professionals build web applications? Like you and I, what we normally do is you go to like W3 schools and you'd be like getting started with jQuery, and then I would put it in the head section, and then I would go maybe to use Bootstrap, and then because I wanted mobile ready application, and then I would go look up maybe a snippet of Bootstrap code in Boot Snippet, and I would grab that, and then let's say I want to make tabs that go across the top of the screen that are mobile reactive friendly, so I would go grab that boot snip, I would paste it in here, and then I would save it, and then there you go, I have my functionality. I might include a JavaScript section. I'd go grab the styles that are associated with that particular boot snip, so I would, which one did I pick? I picked, let's see, tab list, and then I would go find it, horizontal tab list, and then I'd go grab the CSS, and then I'd create a style section in top of my page here. And this is not the way that professionals do it. This is the way a lot of newbies will do it. And I think in the old days when coding was done primarily server-side first and you just push the data into the client, this was the only way people could think of really architecting the application. And when you want another page, you create a whole nother page and you bring in styles and everything for the new page. But now that we're consuming data from multiple different sources for different reasons, a different approach has been used, and this is not it. So let's see what our page looks like. Now we've got the tabs going across, we've got the styles. So in a snippet of code or a control, you might think of a React control, some piece of functionality that you're developing for your web page. You can manage complexity if you could hide all this code. Code is ugly. You don't want to see it. Like, this looks pretty because it's been well formatted, but you add 4 other pieces of code that do different things. Like, all this is doing is displaying an item across the screen, but it's fairly complicated for just doing what it does. Why not encapsulate that code into your own custom DOM element? So in today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to extend from the HTML element class, and we're going to hide the ugliness of this code, and we're going to make it more precise. So this is how the professionals do it. If you look at Facebook and you'll look at the network, you'll see that they've obfuscated all the functionality into separate CDN files that they dynamically load in, and they're doing all these gets. Each one of these is its own React component that's been encapsulated. And the other problem with doing this method is that sooner or later you're going to get into conflicts. Like if one component says like, okay, I need drag and drop functionality, so I'm going to bring in jQuery UI or something because that has easy ways to do drag and drop in the DOM. So you bring that in, and then you might get incompatible versions. Suddenly your jQuery UI component needs certain versions of jQuery or Bootstrap that only work with certain, or the styling starts to get kind of messed up because things are muddled together, and then it can create problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to put it in its own class. So Let's take a look at the HTML element class first, and then we'll go ahead and apply what we learned. So there's something called the shadow root. That sounds so mysterious. Is it some Jungian psychological archetype? No. But what you are doing here is you're going to extend the DOM. The HTML element is the DOM. And you can create your own DOM elements. And you're going to attach the shadow. And then once you have your shadow, you can set your HTML components and your CSS. So this isn't part of the HTML element. This is just the function that I've created to do the CSS. So the CSS involves, essentially, let's make this bigger so you can see it. So the CSS involves just using something called a CSS. That's a lot of S's in a row. But CSS style sheet object. And then it has one function, so simple, and it just takes in the content of your CSS, and that's it. And then all you do is you attach it to that shadow root that you created in the constructor with the adopted style sheets method, and then you can apply as many style sheets as you need to for your component to get it to work. The other feature is that it's got a little watcher service that can watch an attribute and respond with an event if that attribute changes. So we're going to observe the attribute called data.json. So anytime we change it, it's going to have built in this attribute change callback method. And in this, I'm going to detect if the name is data.json, then we're going to render our component. And what I like to do is I like to use this as a base class and then just extend from this base class and implement your render. So all you have to think about is how you're going to render your component, and then everything else will happen automatically. Here's the data that you're going to convert from a string text of the data value into your JSON object. And then you can just use those template literals that we talked about in previous videos. And I noticed what's really popular is to just use inline map traversals of your data array to then render the components of the JSON in the data array, and then use the join, and it will literally create a list of these list items. And then what you do is you can create your own. Here I'm creating my own style sheet, and I'm just putting in the style component that was in the head of our HTML directly into the CSS method that's going to render the styles. And then we're bringing in the bootstrap by doing a fetch to the bootstraps CNN. Now you can make these global, these style sheets, so you don't have to do it for every class that you create for your page. You can just globally create a style sheet object, and then but you have to attach it then to your particular shadow so that your component has access to the style sheets for that particular component. And then you can define your DOM element to be whatever you want to call it. So here I'm going to call it Gen API Basic, and we're going to hide these ugly code implementation, clean up the HTML, and then we can work better on a team and then manage complexity by hiding this ugly code away and only exposing the member functions that we actually care about. So let's look at how we do that. So let me go back to our basic page, and we basically want to strip out this style. So like we don't need any of this anymore. Like I can literally just like nix this, boom, nix all this, I don't need it, boom, we're back to just square one. All right, so this is the way it should be. Everything's nice and clean, and now you want to integrate with your team. So we used to spend like months doing integration testing and come up with all kinds of problems when everybody's components worked wonderfully individually, but then when you integrated them, we ran into problems. So by doing it this way, it actually, you're not going to have too many problems. It's actually going to work really well. So what we want to do is we want to first bring in, we want to import our modules. So I have saved it in the file Gen API basics. So I'm going to put that in the head. And then now we have access. And to define the control, we literally, all we have to do is we just have to lay down that DOM element the same way you would. Now you've just leveraged the power of the extensibility of the HTML language itself using Open Standard Consortium methods. And then there's our initial content. Now, that's what we had defined in the constructor, but the render has not been called yet because it didn't need to render. There's no data. We've got no data. But if we want to add data, then we can just, because this is the dynamic part, right? You can feed your controls different data changes, right? Like somebody will, in Facebook example, they'll be sending a chat, the data will get updated. So now we don't have to worry about when do we need to refresh the component. It does it automatically. So let's try to bind some data to our component. So I'll just copy this little scriptlet. So I'm going to just put a little JavaScript in here. This is fairly standard. And this is going to get my element, and I can just use vanilla JavaScript here. This is normal. This is all normal. And then I'm going to set the attribute. As soon as I set that attribute, boom, it's going to fire the render, and we're going to get first, look, if I change it, if I change this to something else, this is changed, then you'll see that it changes instantly on the screen. Another thing we could do is we could import Gen API, and we could dynamically go and fetch our pet data from our table schema for our pet object, and then we could bind that in. So I'm gonna just put that on a 13-second timer interval. We're gonna load in our code from our Gen API data that we signed up for, and then maybe just fix the formatting. I don't know why it always left space it like that, but I think the import's got to be at the top of the page, at the top of the script tag, and then it'll work here. So also I've got these declared twice because I'm doing the same thing twice, so I don't want to do that. I actually want to just get rid of that part of it. And then, okay, so the first time we've got the changed in there, so we've just got the hard-coded value. We wait 13 seconds, so like, you know, chats could be happening on a page. It's dynamic, things change, right? And so this is reflecting, we update, boom. Now we got the schema from our database right here. We've got, or I could change, you could change the, so we can react now to the changes. And what's nice is we're not using React, so actually I find React constrains you a little too much. It actually can be frustrating to use because they're trying to do everything in line, and they don't really allow you to, you can sort of use normal JavaScript, but it's hard, and you're stuck in your component. This way, we have access to all the other elements. I don't have to worry. I don't have to do some special tricks to like bubble out to integrate with another component. I have direct access to all my DOM elements, and I get the power of all of the search and query capabilities that are built into the DOM language and the JavaScript language itself. I don't have to give up JavaScript and learn some new languages. I can continue using the traditional languages in a more effective way. So this is the way that professionals actually provide discipline, because you see the code now is so much cleaner, and the JavaScript is also been simplified. So everything is, and now I can just focus on the programming logic for that particular control when I want to interact with other controls. So in this way, you can manage complexity, and you can do more, and you're still using the React philosophy or psychology of React. And so it's an awesome way of actually making this work.